And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Experience Hockey Talk, serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. Welcome to a whole new episode of Serious Hockey Talk for serious hockey fans, which I just said. I don't know why I did that. You know why I said that? It's Halloween. And the reason we're starting 30 minutes late is because I was the one handing out all the candy to the kids. So here we are. Halloween's always a great holiday. It's the best holiday. Now that this holiday's over, I don't have to care about the rest of the year except for this show. So with that, we're going to get right on into it with Washington Capitals coverage. There were two games that we got to cover for the Capitals. It was the first one last Thursday night against the Edmonton Oilers in Edmonton, which was the second game of their four-game Western Canada trip. The Capitals take on, or well, technically three-game Western Canada trip, and then they play Montreal Canadiens in Montreal tomorrow. Four-game Canadian trip, even though they're at home right now. Take on an Edmonton Oilers team that is still looking for an identity. The Oilers had a strong showing in a 6-5 overtime loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins the other night, but is looking to build upon that game. For the Washington Capitals, their lineup with Alex Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov, and Devontae Smith-Pelly, Chandler Stevenson with Nicholas Backstrom and TJ Oshie, Jacob Vrana with Lars Eller and Brett Connolly, Dmitry Yaskin with Nick Dowd and Andrei Burakovsky. On defense, they had Dmitry Orlov with Matt Niskanen, Michael Kempley with John Carlson, Brooks Orpik with Christian Jews. Braden Holtby was the starter in net for the Caps. Keys to the game for the Capitals was push the Oilers in their own zone. Last season, the Oilers did not have a great season. It was kind of rolled into this season of sorts, and one of the key people that needs to be on his game is Cam Talbot. The Capitals need to push their play in the Oilers zone and make Talbot uncomfortable and generate a lot of scoring chances on Talbot, and also they need to stay out of the penalty box. For the Edmonton Oilers, their projected lineup was Ryan Nugent-Hopkins with Connor McDavid and Kailer Yamamoto, Tobias Reeder with Leon Draisaitl and Alex Chiasson, Milan Lucic with Ryan Strome and Drake Kagula, Cooper Marody with Kyle Brodziak and Jahar Akari, Oscar Klefbom on D with Adam Larson, Darnell Nurse with Chris Russell, Evan Bouchard with Kevin Gravel, and Cam Talbot starting in goal. In the first period, the Capitals would take a penalty at 14:31. Michael Kempley would be called for 2 minutes for tripping. On that power play, Evan Bouchard would score his first career NHL goal, assisted by Kailer Yamamoto and assisted by Tobias Reeder. At 16:28, they gave the Edmonton Oilers a 1-0 lead going into the first intermission. Shots were even at 9 apiece. Faceoffs were 13-10 in favor of the Caps. The hits were 10-5 in favor of the Capitals, and the Oilers were a perfect 1-for-1 on the power play. For the Capitals, this was an okay period for them. They did well in the faceoff circle, and on a bad call by the officials, the Capitals looked to have killed the lone penalty of the period, but the Oilers were able to get one past Holtby in the final seconds of the power play. The Capitals need to do a much better job with their zone entries. They did an okay job with it, but they were not able to create many opportunities with how they got into the zone. Also, the Caps need to clog up Edmonton's speed in the neutral zone. Going into the second period at 9:19, Milan Lucic would get 2 minutes for cross-checking, and then at 10:06, while short-handed, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins would score his third of the season unassisted. Then at 12:21, Andrei Burakovsky would score his first of the season, assisted by Nick Dowd and John Carlson. Then at 14:59, Michael Kempley would be called for delay of game. Going into the second intermission, Edmonton would be up 2-1. Shots were 23-18 in favor of Edmonton. Faceoffs were 21-18 in favor of the Capitals. Hits were 16-12 in favor of the Caps. And the power play was 0-for-1 for the Capitals, where Edmonton was 1-for-2. This was not a pretty period for the Capitals. A lackluster power play resulted in a shorthanded goal against. Seriously, stop doing that stupid slingshot. I mean, what? This is... Every team in the league does the slingshot, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins destroyed the slingshot in one motion. It's like, don't do the slingshot anymore. It's the stupidest thing you can do on the power play, or in general, period. You never want to pass back. You always want to move forward. And then once you get in the zone, then you can pass back to your points. And the Oilers outshot the Capitals 14-9. Braden Holtby, though, has been on top of his game in this one. The Capitals need to play their game and impose their will on the Oilers. They just weren't doing it at all against the Oilers. It looked like they weren't even trying. And then at 4:35, Dmitry Yaskin would serve a bench minor for delay of game face-off violation. And then at 9:16, Alex Chason would score his third goal of the season from Tobias Ryder and Adam Larson. And then at 11:26, the bench would be called for 2 minutes for delay of game. Brett Connolly would serve that for the Capitals. And then at 18:43, Connor McDavid would get the empty netter, his 6th of the season, from Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. At the end of the game, the Oilers would win 4-1. Shots were even at 32 apiece. Face-offs were 34-26 in favor of the Capitals. Hits were 28-16 in favor of the Caps. And on the power play, the Caps were 0 for 1, and Edmonton was 1 for 4. This was not a great game for the Caps. They did not play very well in any of the 3 zones and were not good at all on their lone power play. Their penalty kill was okay, but the penalties they took were also ridiculous too. And the officials need to be questioned on 2 of the calls made against the Capitals big time, and about the ones that were obvious calls but not called on the Oilers. Because there was obvious stuff that was that should have been called on the Oilers. At the same time, there's some ridiculous stuff called on the Caps. Not an excuse at all. But at the same time, it baffles the mind. All the Capitals can do now is regroup and prepare for Saturday when they visit the Calgary Flames in Calgary. Alright. Which then, of course, that night, when the Capitals were taking on the Edmonton Oilers, the Calgary Flames were taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins and got shell-shocked 9-1 in that game. So going into this game, which was a 4 p.m. matinee game for the Capitals on Saturday afternoon, in an early matinee for the Capitals, they visit the Calgary Flames, who are also going to be looking to rebound from a very bad game the other night. The Flames were dismantled by the Penguins 9-1, while the Capitals lost to the Oilers 4-1. Also in that, it looks like our matchup will be Mike Smith for the Flames and Phoenix Copley for the Capitals. For the projected lineup for the Capitals is Alex Ovechkin with Evgeny Kuznetsov and Jacob Vrana, Andre Burakovsky with Nicholas Backstrom and TJ Oshie, Chandler Stevenson with Lars Eller and Brett Connolly, Devontae Smith-Pelly with Nick Dowd and Dmitry Yaskin. On D, they had Michael Kempney with John Carlson, Dmitry Orlov with Matt Niskanen, Rich Orpik with Matthew Bally, and obviously, as I mentioned, Copley in net. Obviously, one of the keys to their game going into Calgary was they have to play with urgency. The other night in Edmonton, it looked like the Cavs did not play with any urgency at all and lost as a result. The Flames are going to be looking to rebound after their horrendous game against Pittsburgh and are going to want to play with more urgency, and the Capitals will need to match that. Got to keep the feet moving as well. And then going for the Calgary Flames lineup, they had Johnny Gaudreau with Sean Monahan and Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk with Michael Backlund and Austin Czarnik, Dylan Dubé with Elias Lindholm and James Neal, Michael Frolik with Derek Ryan and Garnet Halfway, Mark Giordano with TJ Brody, Noah Hannafin with Travis Hamonic, and Jussi Valimaki with Rasmus Anderson and Mike Smith in goal. Going into this one right off the bat, a minute 10 into the game, James Neal would get 2 for slashing. Then at 1:37, 27 seconds later, Nicholas Backstrom would nullify the power play with an interference call. And then at 9:28, Jacob Vrana would score his 3rd of the season, assisted by Evgeny Kuznetsov. And then at 13:49, Derek Ryan would get 2 minutes for slashing, which would put the Capitals on the power play. And at 14:27, TJ Oshie would score his 6th of the season from Alex Ovechkin and Evgeny Kuznetsov. Then at 14:41, Calgary would respond as Travis Hamonic would get his 1st of the season from Johnny Gaudreau. And then at 16:45, Brett Connolly would get 2 minutes for holding, and on that power play at 16:54, Elias Lindholm would score his 7th of the season, assisted by Johnny Gaudreau and Mark Giordano. So the game would be tied 2-2 going into the first intermission. Shots were 10-9 in favor of the Caps. Face-offs were 14-10 in favor of the Capitals. Hits were 12-11 in favor of Calgary. And on the power play, both teams would be 1 for 2. Pardon me. I needed water because of this part. This period had 3 phases to it. The first was the feeling out process, as both teams were coming off of tough losses. So obviously they wanted to play more defensively and see where they can get their chances at in that regards. Then for a 5-minute stretch, the Capitals looked great and were the dominant team, scoring 2 goals, for which one was on the power play. However, However, after their power play goal to give them the 2-0 lead, they let the Flames back into it and also took a bad penalty that allowed the Flames to tie the game at 2 apiece. What the Capitals need to do is the Capitals need to play with some more killer instinct. They had a 2-0 lead and then let up. You can't do this. Can't do it at all. The Capitals need to hunker down and play with more killer instinct. Then going into the second period, 11:13, the Calgary bench would be called for too many men on the ice, which Matthew Tkachuk would serve. Then at 12:53, Evgeny Kuznetsov would nullify the power play with a 2-minute tripping call. And then at 17:03, Matt Niskanen would score his second of the season, assisted by Brett Connolly and Dmitry Yaskin, giving Yaskin his first point as a Washington Capital. At the end of the second period, the Caps would be up 3-2. Shots were 18-15 in favor of the Caps. Face-offs were 19 apiece. Hits were 17-16 in favor of Calgary, and both teams were 1 for 3 on the power play. And I'm going to be honest with you on this. In all honesty, this was a very boring period to watch. Plus, you had for like the second period in a row, the Capitals lost another power play by taking another penalty. However, the one positive of the period is that they did get the lone goal of the period, and they did it late in the period too, which helps with a momentum swing. The Capitals need to put their foot on the gas and finish this one so they can walk out with a win. They scored late in the second to swing the momentum their way, and they need to keep it in their corner. And then in the third period at 18:33, Matthew Tkachuk would score his fourth of the season, assisted by Rasmus Anderson and Mark Giordano. And then at 18:48, Evgeny Kuznetsov would get 2 minutes for delay of game. So we're going into overtime, tied 3-3. Shots are 26 apiece. Faceoffs were 32-25 in favor of Calgary. Hits were 22-20 in favor of Calgary. Caps were 1 for 3 on the power play, whereas Calgary was also 1 for 3, but with their fourth in progress going into overtime. Nothing happened in overtime, so shots were 30-27 in favor of Calgary. 33-27 were the faceoffs, also in favor of Calgary. Hits were 22-21 in favor of Calgary, and Calgary ended up being 1 for 4 on the power play. Then going into the shootout, in the first round, Matthew Tkachuk and TJ Oshie would both be stopped by the goaltenders, and then Sean Monahan and Kuznetsov would score for their respective teams. And then James Neal and John Carlson would be denied in the third round. Johnny Gaudreau would be denied in the fourth round by Phoenix Copley, and then Nicholas Backstrom would score the game-winning goal to give the Capitals a 4-3 victory. This could have easily been a loss for the Capitals. All honestly, could have been a loss. All they had to do was force the play in the Flame zone for the third period, run down the clock, but instead they turtled and played mainly in their own zone and kept icing the puck, especially near the end. That is a recipe for losing, and they almost did. Bright spot was definitely Phoenix Copley and his play. The first 2 games he played this season, which were losses, he played well and deserved the victory in those. So definitely congratulations to Phoenix Copley for getting his first career NHL win. You should have gotten it in New Jersey. You should have gotten it in the game before, but you finally got it in Calgary, so applauding to you, good sir. So next up for the Capitals will be tomorrow night in Montreal. They'll end their 4-game road span, and then they'll be playing the Dallas Stars at home. And then, of course, keynote is November 9th next week, which unfortunately I will be out of town when that game is happening, and that's the Washington Capitals Hockey Fight Cancer game, but we'll talk more about that later. Most likely we'll talk about it next week. So with that, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll be doing some NWHL, do another quick break, and then we'll be doing NHL news and notes, and then we'll call it a show. So we'll be right back. Hold on one moment. And welcome back to the Experience Hockey Talk, Serious Hockey Talk for serious hockey fans. And it's now time to do some National Women's Hockey League talk. First off, we're going to start off with the Metropolitan Riveters visiting the Boston Pride. Obviously, the Riveters looking for their first victory of the season. So they head in to Boston, and in the first period, Rebecca Russo will get the Riveters on the board with assists from Amanda Kessel and Madison Packer to give them a 1-0 lead. Then in the second period at 12:40, Jillian Dempsey would score, assisted by Emily Field to tie the game. But at 17:54, Chelsea Zayadi would score, assisted by Jenny Ryan and Amanda Kessel to give them back the lead. Then going into the third period at 12:15, Tony Ann Miano would score, assisted by Emily Field, tying the game. But with 3 seconds left in the game, 3 seconds left, Rebecca Russo would get her second of the game, assisted by Ziadi and Kessel to give them the 3-2 victory. Kessel 3 assists for the game. Rebecca Russo 2 goals, giving the Metropolitan Riveters their first win of the season. Katie Fitzgerald played the full 60 minutes, faced 37 shots, made 35 saves for 2 goals against with a .946 save percentage. So definitely a good win for Katie Fitzgerald for her. And then Katie Burt was in goal for the Boston Pride. She faced 29 shots, made 26 saves for a .897 save percentage. And then next up, you had the same day, October 27th, you had the Buffalo Buttes at the Minnesota Whitecaps. The undefeated Minnesota Whitecaps, who have been selling out every game in Minnesota so far. At 5:38 in the first period, Katie McGovern would score to get the Whitecaps on the board, assisted by Jonna Curtis and Amanda Boulier. Then in the second period at 17:59, Maddie Elia would score her first assisted by Haley Skidmore and Corinne Bowie to tie the game. And then in the third period, you'd have a little bit of back and forth between the two teams, as Katie Shipper would score to give Minnesota the lead again. And then Taylor Accorsi would score to tie the game back up for Buffalo. And then with 12:56 in the third period, Jonna Curtis would score, giving the Minnesota Whitecaps a 3-2 victory. And then for the Buttes, they had Shannon Zabatos in goal, 28 shots faced, 25 saves for a .893 save percentage. And then for the Whitecaps, they had Amanda Levaille in goal. She faced 37 shots, made 35 saves for a .946 save percentage. And then the very next day, on Sunday, you had the Whitecaps hosting the Buffalo Buttes one more time. And this one was just as tight as the previous one. You only had 3 goals and a 2-1 win for Minnesota. We're 19 seconds into the game. Katie Shipper scored to give Minnesota the 1-0 lead. But then at 14:40, Danny Camoranci would score on a penalty shot to tie the game for the Buffalo Buttes. Nothing would go down in the third period, but then in the third period at 5:28, Amy Menke would score, giving the Minnesota Whitecaps a 2-1 victory in what was a very tightly contested game, which also featured quite a bit of penalties between the two teams as well. In this one, Shannon Zabatos was in goal again for Buffalo. She faced 30 shots with 28 saves with a .933 save percentage. And then Amanda Levaille was back in goal for the Whitecaps. She faced 35 shots with 34 saves for a .971 save percentage. And then going into and then for her clutch wins over Buffalo, Amanda Levaille was named the Veda Player of the Week for the NWHL. Thanks in large part to the clutch net minding of Levaille, the Whitecaps defeated her former team, the Buffalo Buttes, 3-2 on Saturday and 2-1 on Sunday at the Tria Rink in Minnesota. The Whitecaps are now 6-0 in their first season in the NWHL. Amanda Levaille is actually a perfect 6-0 as well. She has played all the games so far this season for the Whitecaps. the former University of Minnesota Gopher and Isabel Cup champion with the Buffalo Beauts in 2017 and the NWHL Goaltender of the Year for last season, signed with the Whitecaps in June. 6 games into the season, Leveille is 6-0 with a 1.50 goals against average and a .947 save percentage. So Amanda Leveille, she gets Player of the Week, well deserved. She definitely earns it, especially with how much more closely contested the first those 2 games were with Buffalo compared to maybe some of the games against the Minnesota Metropolitan Riveters. Also, a little bit of news. Good article by Billy Fitzpatrick on the NWHL website, NWHL's .zone. Billy wrote a really good article about the Ticket Ambassador Program, which helped a local elementary school make memories at the Riveters home opener, which Txht was at. And I'm going to read a little bit of Billy's article here. The Metropolitan Riveters home opener at the Prudential Center on Saturday, October 20th, was a special game for the 2018 Isabel Cup champions, and not just because of the team's banner-raising ceremony. The Riveters hosted a group of 5 female students from Dr. George Washington Carver Elementary School in Newark, New Jersey, with many of the girls in attendance watching their first hockey game. The students were able to attend the Riveters home opener thanks to the NWHL Ticket Ambassador Program, a program that allows groups or organizations in the community to attend an NWHL game when they typically would not have the opportunity to do so. Those who sign up to be an NWHL Ticket Ambassador donate their tickets to these groups so they can still support their favorite NWHL team, even if the Ticket Ambassador can't make it to the game. So that's what the Ambassador Program does. Very great to see people who never get an opportunity to go to a hockey game, maybe because you can't afford it, to have this happen for them. That is a really great boost for women's hockey, especially to be able to get people involved in the game, especially at a young age with kids who are in elementary school. So definitely hats off to the NWHL and the Ticket Ambassador Program, especially for those students that came from the Dr. George Washington Carver Elementary School in Newark. I'm glad that they enjoyed the game. I actually did see them when we were walking around the Prudential Center. They definitely looked like they were really excited to be there, and I'm glad that they did. And then next up for the NWHL, this is the fun part. The NWHL is off until November 17th. So November 17th, the NWHL will be back in action. The Buffalo Beauts will be at the Boston Pride at Warrior Ice Arena on that Saturday at 7:30 p.m. And then on November 18th, you'll have 2 games in action. The first one will be at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, where you get the Connecticut Whale at the Metropolitan Riveters. And then the Buffalo Beauts will be playing their second game in Boston. Those games are at 2 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. respectively. Let's open up the web page. All right. So I'm going to take one last break. We're going to do some NHL news and notes. Plus, I'm actually going to, and I'm glad that this popped up on me, but there's actually something that also needs to be heavily talked about that people, I guess, just don't understand the concept of this. So I wrote 2 articles about it, one breaking down something, and then the other article saying stop comparing these two because they shouldn't be. So we'll do that. So last commercial break, we'll go to, and then we'll go into NHL news and notes and get right into it. And so just so everyone knows what these 2 commercial breaks are real quick, these are actually panels that I'll be hosting next weekend at DerpyCon in New Jersey. So we'll be right back after a quick break. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Experience Hockey Talk, serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. And it's now time for NHL news and notes. Starting off on October 26th, it was announced that former NHL president John Ziegler passed away. From 1977 until 1992, as just the fourth president in NHL history, John oversaw the growth of the league from 18 to 24 teams, including the 1979 edition of 4 teams from the WHA. He was instrumental in the NHL's transition to becoming a more international league. During his tenure, the share of European-born players in the NHL grew from 2 to 11%. Players from the former Soviet Union first entered the league, and games between NHL and European clubs became a nearly annual tradition under him. And then early season Avalanche standout sparked multi-goal comeback. The Avalanche trio of Mikko Rantanen, Nathan MacKinnon, and Gabriel Landeskog combined for 3 goals and 10 points to lead the club back from deficits 2-0 and 3-1, and spoil the homecoming of former teammate Matt Duchene, who had 2 goals of his own in this game. With his team trailing 3-1, Rantanen scored the first of 5 consecutive Avalanche goals to move into sole possession of the NHL's point lead, overtaking Maple Leafs forward Austin Matthews at that time. Sebastian Aho of the Hurricanes collected an assist on Teuvo Teravain's tying goal in the third period to extend his league season opening point streak to 10 contests, spurring the Hurricanes to a second straight win and into first place in the Metropolitan Division. Aho became the second player in Hurricanes Whalers franchise history to record at least 1 point in each of the team's first 10 games to begin a season, one shy of Ron Francis's franchise mark set in 1984-85. Okay, moving on. And then in his first NHL appearance since February 13th, 2011 with the New York Islanders, Mikko Koskinen made 24 saves to earn the win in his Oilers debut and helped the Edmonton Oilers defeat the Nashville Predators for the first time since March 18th, 2014, snapping a 13-game slide. He became the 15th goaltender in franchise history to earn a win in his first game with the club. Koskinen recorded his first NHL win since February 11th, 2011, which was a 9-3 win versus Pittsburgh. The 7 years and 258 days between regular season wins was the third longest such gap by a goaltender in NHL history. Okay. Predators forward Philip Forsberg had a hat trick. Blackhawks forward Patrick Kane had 2 goals and assists, and Avalanche captain Gabriel Landeskog had a goal. Each scored on Saturday to become the 3rd, 4th, and 5th players to reach the 10-goal mark of the season, joining Maple Leafs forward Austin Matthews and Bruins forward David Pastrnak. It marks the 11th time in NHL history in which 5 or more players reached the 10-goal mark before the conclusion. Before the conclusion of October, and just the second time in the past 25 years. Also, Marian Gaborik, Andrei Kopitar, Patrick Marleau, Alex Ovechkin, and Steven Stamkos did it in 2009-10. Alright. Highlighted. Oh, come on. Stop it. Took the commercial breaks to give you a break. Stop it. Highlighted by Michael Grabner's 2 shorthanded tallies, the Coyotes scored 7 goals in a game for the first time since October 15th, 2014. A 7-4 win versus Edmonton to win their 3rd consecutive game and improve to 5-5-0 this season. Grabner matched a single-game career high with 2 shorthanded goals, also accomplished on February 27, 2014, versus Toronto with New York Islanders. Since 1933-34, only 5 players have recorded more games with 2 shorthanded goals. Wayne Gretzky 4 times, Mario Lemieux 4 times, Butch Goring 3 times, Don Maloney 3 times, and Mark Messier 3 times. Additionally, only 3 other players in Coyotes Jets franchise history have netted 2 shorthanded goals in a regular season contest, which was Keith Tkachuk, who did it in '95 when they're still known as the Winnipeg Jets. Tobias Ryder, December 2014 with Arizona, and Derek Stepan in 2017, also with Arizona. And then in the 743rd all-time regular season meeting between the Canadiens and Bruins, and first this season, Carey Price turned aside all 33 shots he faced to earn his 290th career win and hand Boston its first loss at TD Garden this season. With the victory, Price moved ahead of Patrick Waugh and for second place on the Canadiens' all-time wins list, trailing only Jacques Plante, who has 314 wins. Price earned his 41st career shutout and now sits 5 back of Ken Dryden, 46 for third on the Canadiens' all-time list. George Hainsworth holds the franchise mark with 75 shutouts accomplished in just 318 appearances with the club. Okay. Multi-goal lead proves fragile yet again. The Golden Knights and Kings each trailed 2-0 before rallying for wins on Sunday, while the Sharks led 3-1 before claiming an overtime victory. Sunday marked the 9th consecutive day that a team overcame a multi-goal deficit to defeat its opponent, a stretch seen only once before. There was at least one multi-goal comeback win each day from March 9th to 17th, 1984, with 10 such contests over that span. 21 games this season have seen the winning team trail by at least 2 goals at some point in the contest, with 13 of those instances happening over the previous 9 days. Connor McDavid scored in overtime to boost his season totals to 8 goals, 9 assists, 17 points, and lift Edmonton to their 3rd straight win. He became the 4th different player in franchise history to record 17 or more points for the team's opening 10 games of the season, and first to do so since Mark Messier in 1989-90. Sebastian Aho tallied an assist to become the 3rd player in NHL history to begin a season with an assist in 11 or more consecutive games, team games, while also tying Ron Francis for the longest season opening point streak in Hurricanes Whalers franchise history. Come on. What are you doing? Goals at some point in the contest with 13. Leaving this up. Alright, where was I? Oh yeah, tying Ron Francis for the longest season opening point streak in Hurricanes Whalers franchise history. Aho joined Wayne Gretzky from 1982-83 with Edmonton and Ken Linesman 1985-86 with Boston as the only players in league history to record a season opening assist streak of at least 11 games. Gretzky and Linesman opened with 12-game assist streaks in the campaigns referenced above. Okay, Twitch is done. Alright, so we lost Twitch. For some reason, Facebook Live is acting up. Dixon, how does things look on your end, bud? It's like somebody's trying to hack us or something. But there have been 5 other instances in franchise history of a player recording at least 16 points in the month of October, with the last 3 occurring in October 2007, when current head coach Rod Brindamore, current captain Justin Williams, and Eric Stahl each did so. Stahl set the club record with 9 goals, 13 assists for 22 points in October 2005. And Sammy Kapanen had 8 goals, 8 assists for 16 points in October 1999. Carolina plays its 12th and final game of October, which was yesterday, against Boston. Alright, the National Hockey League announced a landmark sports betting partnership with MGM Resorts. That's all I'm going to say about it, because I am 100% against it. I am anti-gambling, and I think it's stupid. Alright, well, Dixon, I think because the Twitch stream stopped, the Facebook live stream should be good now. Ottawa Senators defenseman Mark Borowiecki has been suspended for 3 games without pay for an illegal check to the head of Vegas Golden Knights forward Cody Eakin during NHL game number 163 in Las Vegas on Sunday, October 28th. The National Hockey League's Department of Player Safety announced that day on the 29th. The incident occurred at 15:24 of the first period. Borowiecki was assessed a major penalty for charging as well as a game misconduct. Borowiecki is considered a repeat offender under the terms of the CBA and, based on his average annual salary, will forfeit $43,902.45. We're going to get to Borowiecki in a little bit later because there's more that we can talk about in that regards. On the 29th, Elias Pettersson scored twice to boost his totals to 7 goals, 3 assists for 10 points this season in 7 games played, and helped the Canucks snap the Wild's win streak at 5 games. Pettersson, who made his NHL debut on October 3rd, became the 21st player in league history to score at least 7 goals through his first 7 career games, and just the 8th to do so in the NHL's modern era. And that was actually the only game for that day. Or was it? No, there was 2 games that day, but it wasn't a lot. And then on October 30th, yesterday, the Lightning strike for 8 goals and a win. Powered by Braden Point's first career 5-point outing, which was a goal and 4 assists. The Lightning scored 8 goals in a game for the second time this season to improve to 8-2-1 and move into first place in the Atlantic Division. The Lightning matched a season high with 8 goals, a benchmark also reached on October 13th against Columbus. The 2018-19 campaign marks just the 3rd season within the last 25 years to feature 6 or more instances of a team scoring at least 8 goals in a game before the conclusion of October. The other occurrences were last season 6 times and 2006-2007, which happened 7 times. 5 different skaters found the back of the net, and Antti Ranta made 25 saves as the Coyotes defeated the Senators to earn their 4th consecutive victory. Arizona has combined for 27 goals over its last 6 games dating to October 18th, the highest total among all teams in that span. The Coyotes scored 27 goals over a 6-game span in a regular season for the first time since registering an equal amount from December 30th, 2006 to January 9th, 2007. Let's see here. Despite surrendering a 3-0 lead in the 3rd period, Tyler Bertuzzi netted the eventual game-winning goal to lift the Red Wings to their 2nd win in as many contests. Tuesday's game marked just the 2nd instance in the last 10 seasons that Detroit has surrendered a lead of at least 3 goals and 1 in regulation. Dennis Cholowski's collected an assist on Bertuzzi's tally to boost his totals to 2 goals, 5 assists, and 7 points. Through his first 10 games of his NHL career, he became the 4th defenseman in franchise history to record at least 7 points through their first 10 NHL games, all with Detroit, joining Clem Laughlin in 1926-27, Peter Hughes in 1990-91, and Nicholas Lidstrom in 1991-92. And in action tonight, you have the Chicago Blackhawks at the Vancouver Canucks at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, the only game of the night tonight. And that will be happening in about 45 minutes or so. Alright, so that's all that. We're going to close that. We're going to talk about a couple things that did happen. Alright, so Dixon, it looks like it's fine now because of the fact that Twitch isn't running now, which is disappointing, but we just got to go with what we got. Alright, so on October 26th, Commissioner Bettman upheld Tom Wilson's 20-game suspension, which myself and others agree with the concept. Now, with the upholding of the suspension, what does this mean for Tom Wilson? Well, for him, him and the NWHLPA had 7 days to submit an appeal to an arbitrator to have the suspension reduced, which they did the very next day, which didn't really surprise anybody in that regards. So Shyam Dawes the same person who reduced Austin Watson's suspension from 27 to 18 for an off-ice matter, heard the hearing today. And from according to reports that I've seen so far, he's going to take some time to work on that, and we probably should hear about something maybe next week or something. And I'm using my article that I wrote about the upholding to bring some clarity. What message is Gary Bettman sending with this decision? In this scenario, after reading the full 31-page explanation behind Bettman's ruling, it is clear that Bettman is sending multiple messages. One being through the NHLPA and their tactics to paint St. Louis Blues forward Oscar Sundqvist as declared to be at complete fault for the hit and injuries he sustained. Which, by the way, if I'm the St. Louis Blues, I am super angry at the NHLPA for that. The other fact is that George Parros has actually had many conversations, some even in person, with Wilson throughout last season to discuss ways that Wilson can become a better player, but how in a sense has fallen on deaf ears. So it's more of a, hey, we've been talking to you, we've given you some warnings in the playoffs, let's, I'm going to uphold it because obviously you need to sit out 20 games. I did a much more thorough examination of the 31-page explanation. I'm going to read some stuff here. And these are all exact quotes. I screenshotted it so it didn't have this, oh, you're just trying to manipulate. No, this is the actual thing. There's no cut-ups. There's no breaking down context. While it appears Mr. Sundqvist dipped his right shoulder to take the shot, the video footage reveals that his head and the core of his body remained on a steady plane. There was no meaningful movement of Mr. Sundqvist's head between the time Mr. Wilson had committed to the check and the time he delivered the check. The significant force of the check caused Mr. Sundqvist's head to snap and his entire body to spin around before landing on his right shoulder. So one of the points was that the NHLPA made was that Sundqvist put himself in the vulnerable position. As stated by Commissioner Bettman in that statement, he disagrees with that. While Sundqvist is eligible to hit, the notion that he put himself in a vulnerable position, that was proven to be invalid. Just to throw this out there too, so people know, Mr. Sundqvist was administered a SCAT-5 examination and was diagnosed with a concussion and superficial facial lacerations. Mr. Sundqvist also suffered a right shoulder AC sprain, which the injury report concluded was the result of him landing on his right shoulder. Mr. Sundqvist was placed on injury reserve, and as of the date of the appeal hearing and the date of the decision, he has not yet returned to play, although it appears that his return to play is relatively imminent. Mr. Sundqvist has made eight regular season games for his club to this point, in addition to the remainder of the September 30th preseason game against Washington. So that was a big factor too. The fact that as of that hearing, Oscar Sundqvist has yet to play a game. Now, one of the interesting things is that there was a lot of people involved in this hearing, and the hearing was held on October 18th at the offices of the league in New York, and attended at the hearing were Tom Wilson, his agents Pat Morrison, Mark Guy, along with John Gerba, Maria Dennis, Don Zavello, David Sinclair, former Washington Capital Joe Ricci, and Matthew Schneider on behalf of the NHLPA. In addition to Mr. Wilson, Washington Capitals general manager Brian McClellan appeared and also was called to testify. Joining Bettman were members of the league office staff, including Bill Daly, David Zimmerman, Julie Grand, and Jamie Hacker. George Parros from the Department of Player Safety was later called to testify during the hearing. Also in attendance were counsel from Proskauer Rose. The hearing began at approximately 11 a.m. and concluded at approximately 6:15 p.m. So that was a long hearing, a lot of people involved. The hearing lasted 7 hours and 15 minutes. So an interesting part of Wilson's testimony is that finally even Mr. Wilson admitted that delivering the check on Mr. Sundquist, he made contact with Mr. Sundquist's head, while he also maintained that he made significant contact with Mr. Sundquist's body. When pressed, Mr. Wilson acknowledged that he could not conclude one way or the other whether Mr. Sundquist's head was the main point of contact on the play. Bettman concluded that the video and the other evidence described above provide clear and convincing evidence that it was. Bettman also rejected the argument that Mr. Wilson's angle of approach and resulting check on Mr. Sundquist was somehow justified because he was merely back-checking in accordance with Washington's defensive system and how he is coached to play. This is the same argument I have previously considered and rejected in the Patrick Coletta matter years ago. This is something I agree with Bettman on. I highly doubt under Barry Trotz last season and Todd Reardon in this season that he is being coached to play with the intent to hit on every opportunity when back checking. So yeah. And then in an interesting note, you had Brian McClellan under testimony state the following. I also find that Mr. Wilson's testimony that he could not have done anything differently to avoid checking Mr. Sundquist's head to be entirely inconsistent with and undermined by the testimony of Brian McClellan, his own team's general manager, who flatly acknowledged that Mr. Wilson had options to avoid checking Mr. Sundquist's head. So right there, McClellan openly admitted in testimony that Wilson could have done something different to change the impact of the hit and where the main point of impact. I'm not going to go over that. So what's next? Next thing is we wait and see if the NHLPA and Tom Wilson file appeal to the neutral arbitrator, which they did, and that hearing happened today. We'll be finding out soon about it. However, the biggest thing that comes next for Wilson is when he does finally return to the Capitals lineup, he will need to play smarter and pick better spots on when to throw his hits. Physicality is a huge part of hockey, and Wilson should never shy away from it, but he does need to do a better job of doing it smartly. And then, of course, as I mentioned in my article, source notes, everything that we clipped in there, we did not alter any of it at any point. We wanted it to be legitimately. And then here's my last point that I want to talk about tonight, and that is the fact that Gary Bettman is getting a lot of crap. The league is getting a lot of crap about the suspensions of Austin Watson and Tom Wilson. And, and I started off this article with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor because obviously when you're writing about something and people are super angry, especially at the commissioner, everyone hates the commissioner, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm not a fan of Bettman, but he has done a lot of good for the game, too. You gotta acknowledge it. I did a little tongue-in-cheek. My father has always had this saying of 11 out of 10 people are stupid. And right now I'm trying to fix the stupid, so please wish me luck. Obviously that's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor. Have a little fun. So I'm just going to read the article to all of you so it's straight to the point. So in the hockey world, one of the hottest topics is that of NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman and the controversy surrounding him in regards to the suspensions of Austin Watson for domestic abuse off the ice and Tom Wilson for an illegal check to the head during a game. Now, these are two completely separate matters, and I'd like to take a deeper look into both suspensions and explain why both of these cases need to be considered as such. First, let's take a look at Austin Watson and of the Nashville Predators. During this past offseason, Watson and his girlfriend had a domestic dispute that led to some physicality and Watson being arrested for the incident. When all was said and done, Watson pleaded no contest to the charges that were put against him. Now, please note, I don't have all the facts on this case. No one really has all the facts on this case, so let's stop demonizing people. We can demonize people, but let's be smart about it. As a result of this off-ice matter, Commissioner Gary Bettman had a hearing with Watson and then handed him a 27-game suspension for conduct detrimental to the league. As a result of this ruling made by Bettman, per the CBA, Watson had the right to appeal his suspension. And since Bettman was the one handing out the suspension, it had to go to a neutral arbitrator. When Watson's appeal was heard by the neutral arbitrator, the arbitrator reduced the suspension from 27 games to 18 games. That's the key factor right there. The neutral arbitrator reduced it. Bettman did not. Now let's look at Tom Wilson's suspension during a preseason game. Wilson delivered an illegal check to the head of St. Louis Blues forward Oscar Sundqvist, which resulted in a match penalty and a game misconduct. Wilson had a player safety hearing with George Peros, the head of the Department of Player Safety, and was given a 20-game suspension given his recent history in the previous 12 months and several sit-down conversations and warnings that was given to him during that time. Recently, Wilson and the NHL appealed the suspension, which per the CBA was heard by Gary Bettman. This past Thursday, Bettman upheld the suspension, and Wilson is now appealing to the neutral arbitrator that will hear the case today. So, now back to the story on both cases have been established. Let's look at the similarities and differences. So, differences. There's more differences than similarities. So, for similarities, Watson's original suspension handed to him was by Bettman for 27 games. Wilson's suspension was handed to him by George Peros, and it was 20 games. So both games were over 20 games or more. Per the CBA, any suspension 6 games or more can be appealed. So that's really the only similarity. They both had 20-plus game suspensions, or 20 or more games suspended for, and they had the right to appeal. It's all the similarities that they had. For the differences, Austin Watson's suspension was the result of an off-ice matter. Tom Wilson's suspension was the result of a play on the ice. Watson's suspension was given to him by the NHL commissioner. Wilson's was given to him by George Peros of the Department of Player Safety. Watson's suspension could only be appealed to a neutral arbitrator per the CBA, whereas Wilson's had to be appealed to the commissioner first, then if upheld, can be appealed to a neutral arbitrator per the CBA. So, at the end of the day, Bettman gave more games to Watson for his off-ice conduct than what he upheld for Tom Wilson for an on-ice play. By 7 games. He gave 7 more games to Austin Watson for what he did off the ice than what Wilson did on the ice. And people are saying that, Bettman doesn't know what he's doing by reducing the suspension. He didn't reduce it. He gave the 27-game suspension. Chaim Dawes reduced it to 18 games, and guess what? We're probably going to see him reduce the suspension of Tom Wilson, in the upcoming week. Chaim Dawes is also the same guy who reduced Ryan Braun's steroid suspension almost in half, too, so keep that one in mind. So, as you can tell, the only similarity that these two have is both suspensions for 20 or more games, but it's what the differences that matter here because this is where everyone is getting confused. As I've been explaining, you're getting confused, stop getting confused. Austin Watson was suspended for off-ice, blah, blah, blah. I already went over that. Okay. So what is the issue here? The correct answer is there is none, but people are making an issue of it anyways. Now, there is a crowd that is going after Bettman in the league because there is no domestic violence policy in the NHL. Which, yes, that is an issue. It needs to be addressed in the next CBA talks with the NHLPA, as there should be a domestic violence policy with strict guidelines and penalties for when those type of matters occur, but right now there isn't, and we need to accept that fact that as of right now, until a new policy can be put in place, this is how it works when it comes to domestic disputes off the ice. The commissioner reviews it, reviews the off-ice matter, and then he makes a ruling on the matter. Also, something that you all need to keep in mind is Slava Voinov is still considered as suspended indefinitely from the NHL, and if he were able to be allowed to return to the United States, which by the way, per U.S. law, he can't because he had a felony, then the league has made it known that more punishment will be coming his way, and his domestic violence case is much more gruesome than the one concerning Austin Watson. And in no way are we saying that Watson's case is minor. We're just stating the fact that Voinov is a much more serious case, as his wife was beaten, bloody, and hospitalized. Austin Watson's girlfriend was not. But Voinov literally beat the holy hell out of his wife, and that was another line that was just crossed, which when he, because it was a felony and stuff like that, he was going to get deported, so he can't come back to the country anyways. So, I agree. there needs to be something put in place about domestic violence off the ice. That needs to be done. But for now, we're going to have to accept the fact that the commissioner reviews it. After he reviews it, he hands out the punishment that he sees fit. Commissioner Bettman saw fit that it should be 27 games for Austin Watson for what happened off the ice. For Slava Voynov, he sees it as suspended indefinitely. If he ever gets to come back, which he isn't, there will be more punishment coming his way. Just throwing that out there. But I agree. There needs to be something that's put in place, especially for domestic violence. I think something needs to be put in place for Rule 48. I think what they need to do is that they need to have set things, and that's where Borowiecki comes in, because he got 3 games for almost a similar hit that Tom Wilson did, except for the fact that Borowiecki came in and just destroyed the guy that he threw the hit on. And he should have gotten more games, especially the fact that, if you're considering Tom Wilson a repeat offender, and you're calling Borowiecki a repeat offender, but Borowiecki gets 3 and Tom Wilson gets 20, it sends the wrong message. You got to send the right message. So, like Borowiecki, when he did his hit, when I looked at that play, but I think it was a little bit worse than Tom Wilson's. I think Borowiecki should have gotten like 5 or more. And that they need to have a standard, and they need to set up something where if you're doing headshots or domestic violence, you're just not allowed to appeal the suspension. They got to put it in the CBA, but the reality is that the NHLPA is never going to put that into the CBA because they want to be able to appeal it every time if they get the opportunity. That's just the reality. So, now with the above stated, let's get right to it. Stop blaming Gary Bettman for what is going on right now, but most importantly, stop comparing off-ice matters as if it were an on-ice matter. They are completely different, and they can't be compared. They just can't. What was handed out by the league to Austin Watson and to Tom Wilson can't be compared because they happen under different circumstances. Gary Bettman is handling these situations the best he can and has done so with respect. And one of the other key things to note is that Cheyenne Dawes, the league is stuck with him until June 30th, which is when the PA and the league decide if they're going to renew him for another year. For the league's sake and for the PA's sake, you hope he doesn't come back. You don't want him back because guess what? He's the one causing the problems for you, Bettman. He's the one causing the problems for the league. We got to get rid of the guy who's actually causing the problems, and it's him because he's reducing suspensions that need to be long. And that's the reality of it. So, alright, it is 9:30. We did an hour. I don't know how we survived. To the people who were watching on Twitch, we apologize for the technical difficulties. For those watching on Facebook, when we had those little hiccups, I apologize too. I don't know what the heck's going on. We'll figure it out. But, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to go to txhthockey.com for all of our articles and stuff like that. Steve Gardner just put up a great article about Austin Matthews and the effect that it's going to have on the Maple Leafs with him out of the lineup for the next 4 weeks. Definitely give that a read. Dixon's doing the daily. We'll be back next week on Tuesday. That's right, because the Capitals play Wednesday night next week, so we'll be doing a Tuesday night show. So, yeah, TXHT next Tuesday, 8 p.m. TXHThockey.com, Facebook at facebook.com/TXHThockey. If you're still watching us right now, hit that like button, follow us. Yeah, so overall, have fun, and until next week, we'll see you on the ice or on TXHThockey.com.